Hey team, thank you so much for joining me on the Baby Playbook podcast. So good to have your company on the podcast today with so much to chat about. We've had some really amazing guests on the last couple of weeks on all different topics, from solids to sleep to mental health to, of course, our amazing childcare series that we did, which ran for over a month there, because we had so many different guests on with so many great opinions on, getting your child into daycare, how to, get them prepared, how to feel safe, how to connect with your carers. So make sure you're tuning into that. Now, before I get into today's episode, I wanted to ask if it was okay if you guys take some time, just like a minute of your time, to go and rate this particular podcast or give it a review on the podcast platform that you listen to it on or watch it on. Of course, if you're on YouTube, leave a comment, just interact with it as best as you can, because it helps to get it out there. And I'd really, really, really appreciate that. So today's episode is a bit of a follow-on from my episode with Kat Dean, where we spoke about, providing your child with nutritionally dense foods once you start solids. And solids, I've said it a few times, it can, come, it's kind of a bit of an adventure. It can come with a heap of stress, information overload, and of course messiness. So I have written down all of my advice when it comes to starting solids with your baby. And I wanted to kind of get that into an episode for you, a really quick one where I can share with you all of my particular tips. And also at the end of my tips, I am also going to share with you my must-have purchases, and I'll give you a little bit of insight into what isn't really worth your money, because this can also be one of those things that really blows out when it comes to budget, finding all these super gadgets that help you with figuring out how to make baby food and storing it and all this different stuff. Anyway, these are the few things that I learned along the way to build my confidence as well with starting solids. So I just wanted to get into that with you. So I've said this before on many different episodes. The number one thing before you start solids with your baby, and even before you have a baby, I believe, is that you need to be doing a first aid course for baby and children. It is so important. And particularly for when you start solids, because it gives you a little bit more confidence in going into it and not really feeling that intimidated. You're still going to feel intimidated, but just that overwhelmed by, the possibility of choking and gagging, and really understanding the two and looking out for signs and what to do in the case that this does happen. So that is my number one non-negotiable. You have to get it done. Now let's talk about some tips going into the solids section phase of baby. When your baby's approaching that 4-month-old mark, it's now important to start to kind of investigate the benefits of both puree feeding and baby-led weaning. Really decide on what route you will take with your baby. Now look, choosing between puree and baby-led weaning seems to be a thing, like you can either do one or the other, but I don't know, this is just an unwritten, unofficial rule. You can do a combination of both. You can do one over the other, one a little bit more than the other, or you can do just one in particular. It's really whatever you'd like to try with your baby, and I truly believe that both particular methods have their own benefits. I, for example, want to share my experience. I usually start with puree, and then I, add a bit of texture. And then when my baby is about that 7, 8, 9 month old mark, I start to give some, baby safe cut foods that they can start exploring that baby-led weaning approach with. So every particular approach is different, but I would do a little bit of research to see kind of what aligns with you and your family and how you'd like to tackle things. I particularly chose to follow the Save Our Sleep feeding plan. Started my baby on puree. As I said, once I hit 7 months, was offering that finger food alongside it. They do have a Save Our Sleep feeding book, which is a really great guide on starting solids, and I recommend to all of my friends. Another great resource is the Nourishing Bubs solid seminar. So Nourishing Bubs is an amazing brand. I'm going to link it in the show notes, that provides you with ready-made puree of vegetables that you can buy from the supermarket. And they've also extended out their product range. They have like finger foods and things like that. It's such a great brand, a great Australian brand as well. And the founder, Olivia, we've had on actually the podcast, which I'll link you to her particular episodes if you have a look, to listen to how she, advises to start solids. And she also does a really great allergen episode. But they host a seminar every few weeks, which you can sign up for, and it literally takes you through starting solids. It's so handy. I remember it was about an hour and it was virtual. It is a must watch. Now, remember when your baby first starts puree, the only thing they've had until then is milk. So one tip I got was to make sure that the puree is really smooth for them. So even when you think it's smooth enough, I'd probably give it another blitz just for those really early first weeks, because again, like you can't really be putting these like chunks of things in their mouth on a spoon. They're going to get really off it. Think milk and think like just slight step above milk, so like a little bit thicker than that. And then you can of course like change texture as they get used to it as well. Cooking and preparing puree for your baby seems like so much effort, but try to not be overwhelmed by this. We spoke about Kat Dean about simplifying, solids and introducing solids. Really just look at what you have in your pantry, what your family is usually eating, how you can integrate that. Allocate one morning where you kind of have a little bit of a think as to what you're going to be preparing, blitz it up. I'm a big fan of just doing it in the moment, but you can of course do a lot of prep and freeze that. Usually if you freeze things in smaller cubes and containers, because of course, just a reminder that your baby's not going to be eating that much, especially in those first few weeks and months. So you don't want to be wasting food. That just makes it, really much easier for yourself if you want to be that well organized with your food. Steaming fruit and vegetables is better than boiling. I got this tip from a nutritionist when I was doing solids, and I thought it was really, really great to know. So steaming your fruit and veggies is better than boiling. It retains all the nutrients inside. So if you can do that, it is so much more beneficial for baby. Now, the general rule is to introduce a new food to your baby once every 3 days. So if you're cooking up a new food, and when I just say new food, I just mean, for example, like if you've been giving them carrots, sweet potato, pumpkin, whatever, and you want to try a new one, just give it a couple of days just to decipher between flavors and what they're liking and what they're not liking, and also what they may be reacting to as well, or what's causing an upset stomach. You just don't want to be giving them all these new foods, like 5-6 different items in one day, and then you kind of can't decipher what's actually given them a bit of an upset stomach. Also, of course, as I said, make small batches to start. You never know if your baby might not react well to it, and you just don't want to waste your money and your effort as well. When introducing a new food, it's really good to do it around lunchtime, because of course, if they do have a bit of a reaction or if it upsets their stomach, then this happens in the afternoon and not overnight, or not first thing in the morning when they have to go down for their morning nap. So that is a really good time to start, lunchtime. And of course, this is where I want to insert that it is really important to introduce the 12 common allergen foods to your baby before their first birthday. If you're in Australia, you can go to preventallergies.org.au, and there's so much info on that there. I believe this is something as well that your midwife or your GP will speak to you about postnatally, and once you're kind of approaching that solids mark. That is a really important one. And as I said, look up our allergen episode with Olivia from Nourishing Bubs, where she goes through all of this. It's so handy, such a must listen. Warm up your baby's food. So don't serve it to them cold, because I think what we tend to think is that they don't mind it cold, or they don't know. Think about if you're about to eat something, it seems much more inviting if you have something that's really nice and warm. Obviously, testing the temperature of the food before you serve it to them to make sure it's not that hot. But when they are teething, you may want to get it a little bit cooler, because it is kind of helpful with the gums being sore and that sort of stuff. Your baby can get pretty irritated just sitting in their chair waiting for you to feed them. So my recommendation is, if you pop them in the high chair and you're kind of getting things together, give them something to hold on to. It could be like a spoon, a bowl, piece of food when you introduce that finger food, just so that they're not just watching you and waiting, especially if you haven't realized that they've gotten pretty hungry and then all of a sudden they see the food and they get way too excited and you're going too slow for them. As tempting as it is, when feeding your baby, do not keep wiping their mouth and their chin with the spoon to collect the food that didn't make it into their mouth, or either with their bib or a rag. You can imagine how uncomfortable it is for the baby, constantly being wiped and kind of interrupted. It makes the feeding experience really negative. So that was one thing that I was told to try and control. I know it's so tempting when food is just kind of falling down their face, but it's not nice for them to have that spoon kind of scraped over their chin or constantly have it being wiped. Just pick up the food once it drops onto the bib, and you can do that much later. Now, when introducing water to your baby, use a bottle that is leak proof. Of course, the big one that everyone uses is the B box, because it's just does not, it does not leak. The water stays in there. Make sure you put water in a separate bottle to their milk so they understand the difference. This is really key. I wouldn't be using a milk bottle with water in it to introduce water to your baby when it is appropriate, because then you kind of trigger some confusion there. They want to have their water bottle, and you want to have their milk bottles as separate. Okay, let's talk about some purchases now. So you need to be able to put your baby into a supportive high chair when they start solids. Supportive means one with that high back, head, neck support and proper leg support as well. So I know that there's some high chairs out there that are either like super cheap and really easy to wipe, or they're really like nice aesthetic. If they don't have that like proper support on like the head and the shoulders, baby's just going to be like not great in terms of sitting for like longer periods of time and get really over it. So I know they don't look the best. They're kind of those old school high chairs. I just got one off Facebook Marketplace. Yeah, they're so much better, just at least for those first few months, and then you can move them into the other high chair once they get a little bit more solid. You also need that proper leg support. Don't have their legs dangling. They actually get really tired by that. Olivia said it really good in our previous episode where she was talking about introducing solids, where it's like trying to eat dinner on like a bar stool. You kind of like, you're not that comfortable. Do not be tempted to feed your baby in a baby rocker when first starting. It isn't supportive enough, and it is a choking hazard as well, or even like a baby bouncer, anything like that, or even just standing, like sitting them up on a couch is not recommended at all. Clean the high chair after every mealtime. I know this sounds like it's so much effort, but if you leave the food splatter, it will just harden and it'll be a lot more effort to clean after. So I am big on just like give it a wipe straight after every meal so that it's like gone and it's much easier to clean. Let's talk about blenders now. So there are so many different products on the market out there to help you like prepare baby food. I genuinely just think you need a blender, and you probably already have one in your cupboard at home, in your kitchen, even just like a NutriBullet or something like that, like a more portable one. Don't bother buying a baby food processor. Just use a normal adult one, stick blender even. Those are really good. They all work great as pureeing machines. If you need to purchase one, then like go for kind of a bit of an upgrade and go for a blender that has a hot function as well, so you don't have to wait for the food to cool before blitzing it. That's a really good tip, because some of the blenders, like you have to kind of put it in either like warm or cold. You can't put in hot food, so get one of those ones. Okay, fancy baby food freezing pods are really expensive, and I think that they're quite pointless. To start with, purchase silicone ice trays to freeze puree in. You can get these from like Kmart, because what's great about these is that they're small portions. So you make a small batch of puree, you can freeze a little bit of it, and then you can just take out those little cubes. You can take 3 out even if you need, 3, 4, 5, whatever you need, or 1 or 2. And then that really helps with the amount of the amount of puree that your baby's actually eating at that time. When your baby increases the amount they eat, then move on to like small containers that are freezer and microwave friendly. Glass is preferred, of course. If you're preparing like a big batch of food each week, measure out the amounts you need for your baby's like daycare days in the containers, have them ready to go in the freezer for the week, just make sure everything's like pre-planned and spread out as well. Of course, a really good thing to have in your baby when they're eating, because it gets so messy, is a smock. My baby hated those silicone bibs and cloth bibs as well. They're just kind of like way too much effort to wash. So I'm big on like a smock. It covers everything. Or in summer, just feed your baby without anything on, like nappy on. It's so much easier to give them like a wash or like a bath straight after, or just a bit of a wipe down. Like a raincoat style bib is what I'm talking about. So it just covers everything. Those are really great. Let's talk feeding on the go, because what ends up happening is once you start solids, you realize you need to all of a sudden pack all this food for baby as well, alongside the milk, like it's a whole thing. You do need a food thermos. This is super handy for when you're out and about and need to bring your baby's food along. Have about 2 on hand. You can purchase them from like your local supermarket. Basically, you just fill it with boiling water, let it sit for 20 seconds to heat it up with the lid on. and then it heats it up before you empty that water out and pour in the already heated food inside, so it stays nice and warm in there. And that is so easy to just bring along with you. Get like a spoon as well. Those soft in texture spoons are really, really good for when your baby is starting, in case your baby bites down on it, and they're really small enough to fit into your baby's mouth easily as well. When it comes to bowls and plates for home, you obviously need that as well. Anything your baby can't break. That's the rule behind that one. Anything your baby can't break really works. So don't, bother with, I know we got these really beautiful, are they like the Peter Rabbit bowls? I don't know what they are, but they're like a really classic bowl, kids bowl. And we got those, but we weren't able to use them till much later on. They're not great for babies. You need something that like will hit the floor a few times. The other item that I wanted to share with you guys that I'm in no way like paid or affiliated with, I just absolutely think it's like the most genius baby gadget that has ever been created, is the Catchy. Look it up online on Instagram. It was a lifesaver for many messy meal times. Basically what it is like it's this platform, this plastic platform that you put on your baby's seat, your high chair, and it comes in all different configuration, so you can put in which high chair you have and buy the one for that particular high chair. It covers like so many different brands, and it catches everything, like anything that falls on it. It's really great for as well like food wastage, because if it's like finger food, you can actually just pick it up off that if you've obviously cleaned it well, and store it for later if baby doesn't want it, and it's not a waste because it's hit the floor or anything like that. A couple of tips that I wanted to finish up on. Remember, all babies eat different amounts of food, so don't compare your baby's amount of food to others. But of course, if you are worried about that, you can speak to your GP and your baby's doctor and then go from there. Lots of babies go through phases of food refusal, so just try and be patient during this time. Look up some techniques on how you can tackle it. I use the information in our Save Our Sleep feeding book as well. That also had a bit of an element of that. So I know it's overwhelming, but try not to let it bother you too much. And the other tip I have is your baby has no real sense of mealtime in the first few months, so don't stress about serving a breakfast food for dinner. It's literally at that time just about getting some form of food into them. So if you do the baby cereal at the end of the day, that's totally fine. If you do fruit for lunch, that's totally fine. Don't be stressed out about providing all these gourmet meals. So that's all my tips on this particular topic. Thank you so much for listening, guys. I really, really, truly appreciate your time. And as I said at the start of the episode, if you would like to give the podcast a review, I would very much appreciate it. I will be back with you next week.